Just outside the quaint town of Puente Viejo, Spain, is a cave system known as Monte Castillo. And within this system, a specific cave called El Castillo contains some of the oldest human cave paintings dating back to 41,000 years ago. For centuries, the focus of paleoanthropology has been the representational art that our ancestors left behind in caves. Eye-catching drawings of deer, horse, bison, and human figures. But in 2012, Genevieve von Petzinger, paleoanthropologist and researcher for the University of Victoria, discovered something overlooked by many experts. She analyzed ancient art from over 370 ancient caves all over the world and discovered that since antiquity, humans have been using the same 32 symbols, geometric signs that form some kind of alphabet. Von Petzinger suggests that the 32 signs do seem to have communicative properties, and we can possibly trace the origins of our first writing system back to these ancient symbols. How do the symbols that we see today in our religions, our flags, and our institutions connect us to an ancient past that we have barely scratched the surface of understanding? And when this is revealed, what will it say about humanity and its future?
The use of symbols to communicate ideas goes back into our history long before language was even created. When we talk about the study of symbols today, there are different kinds of symbols that we become accustomed to, sometimes without even thinking about it. There is a form of language that has no words and no sound, and I'm fascinated by this form because it may represent one of the most advanced and sophisticated forms of communication. It's called an ideogram. And an ideogram does precisely what it suggests. It is a symbol that represents an entire idea or an entire concept without ever uttering a word or a phrase or a sound to describe that idea, and without needing a complex language of alphabet to describe the nuances of that idea.
If these symbols are more complex than our current written language, does the infamous number 32 have any correlation to the ancient past?
The significance of the number 32 in the Western occult tradition is highly significant, and it has to do with the so-called Tree of Life on the Kabbalah. So on the Tree of Life on the Kabbalah, there are 10 what are called sephira, or spheres. Each one of these spheres is supposed to depict a different aspect of being. They also seem to depict other dimensions. And there are 22 paths that lead from Sephira to Sephira. Now, those 22 paths match the 22 trumps in the tarot deck, which I don't have to tell people is extremely mysterious. Nobody knows really where the tarot deck came from. It just appears with all of this knowledge. Now, each one of the 22 trumps in the tarot is equated to one of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And since the Hebrew alphabet letters are equated to a numerical value, you have a perfect system of basically what you're seeing. So these 22 paths, represented by numbers, are the frequencies that separate these different dimensions one from the other. And you're looking at a map, an ancient map, left to humanity about that knowledge.
Could this ancient map of 32 correlate with the 32 ancient symbols used around the world almost 40,000 years ago? Where could this map be leading us? One thing is for sure, that some of these ancient symbols seem to be burned into our subconscious.
So we have to ask, how is it possible that these symbols stay around for thousands upon thousands of years? Why does culture after culture adopt these symbols? There must be an inherent meaning. One explanation is the study of phosphenes. When NASA astronauts first went into outer space, they would look towards the center of the galaxy and cosmic rays would ping off the retina of their eye, and they started seeing various symbols: crosses, hash marks, spirals, and it led to NASA having to redesign the astronauts' helmets so that it would deflect the cosmic rays. And this led to a theory that perhaps some of these symbols are hardwired into our DNA.
Whether this be the cross on a Christian church or the crescent upon an Islamic mosque, all of these symbols are there to instill a certain emotional reaction, one that will trigger deep within us a connection with the sacred, with the divine, with the otherworldly. And these symbols have been used for tens of thousands of years, and of course, we still see them as important today.
If we take these ancient 32 symbols and we look through antiquity, we can see how they have been formed into much more concrete images. But these concrete images began to hold a certain frequency and meaning throughout time, meanings we still hold today. Experts suggest there are 7 main ones: the Vesica Piscis, the Star of David, the Ankh, the Cross, the Chicana, the Swastika, and the Crescent Moon. If we go back into antiquity, how has the meaning of these symbols changed? And most importantly, how do all of these symbols bring us back to an ancient civilization known as Atlantis? We first start with the star and crescent. It is an iconographic symbol used in various historical contexts, but is best known today as a symbol of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, and Pakistan. It is also often considered as a symbol of Islam by extension. Andrew Collins and Freddie Silva suggest this ancient symbol was possibly connected with the cycle of the moon and its feminine origin.
The crescent symbol is not simply a sign of the moon, but it is the symbol of the cycle of life itself that was defined from very earliest times by the periodicity of the moon, the different phases that it would take, and its effect not only upon the tides and water, but also upon the human bodily cycle, particularly that within the female cycle.
One of the earliest recorded uses of the crescent symbol was the goddess Sin in Babylon, and before that in Sumeria. Now, there's an interesting overlap here because her original name was Sin, which means that by the time you get to the historical era in Christianity and you have sinners, it meant that the church, who understood these concepts and they wanted to take the women and the divine bloodline out of the whole equation, they began to associate sin with the lunar concept by making the number 13 unlucky. It's elemental because there are 13 lunations in every solar year. So 12 months of the solar year, there are 13 lunar cycles. So the number 13 is always synonymous with the movement of the moon. Sin, who is the lunar goddess of the Babylonians, is a sinner.
In Latin, the Vesica Piscis simply means bladder of the fish. You can find this symbol in paintings of Christ and the Buddha, and it can also be found in sacred geometry and Roman depictions. Freddie suggests that the symbol has been known through antiquity as a symbol of all-knowing and the creative force behind it.
If you take it at its basic level, the understanding that the universe starts with the creative force, which is symbolized by the circle. And that circle is all-knowing, it's all representative, okay? Everything exists in that circle, and paradoxically, it doesn't exist outside it. Well, how does the energy in that circle know what's outside it? Well, it begins to separate. And once it separates, it goes from its divine nature into its divine opposites. So there's a tension of opposites that takes place because both circumferences are placed on the center of each circle. It was made very popular by the Greeks, and certainly made very popular during the Christian era, because if you take the center of the Vesica Piscis with the two arms extended, you create the sign of the fish, which brings us back again to the esoteric tradition of Jesus and the tradition that he was following, which is to do with early Gnostic Christianity, which is an offshoot of Egyptian principles and other principles that came back from the time of the gods.
The Star of David, a hexagram shape, is mostly associated with the Jewish community and to the first King David. The earliest depictions were used in medieval Arabic literature by Kabbalists as talismanic protective amulets, where it was known as the Seal of Solomon among Muslims. Sonia Grace suggests this star goes far beyond the representation of King David, and it represents the idea of freedom within the universe.
The Star of David has much older origins, dating back to the beginning of this phase of humanity in Egypt, 10,000 BC. It was created in likeness of the pyramids, but also represents what so much of Egyptian mythology talks about, which is duality. The Star of David was adapted by Moses and Abraham because they understood what the pyramids were actually used for. So they adapted that symbology because they were trying to flee Egypt and not be enslaved. In the pagan religion, it was also used as a transport symbol. It was really a symbol to free the people.
The swastika symbol can be found in some Asian temples and in Tibet as a symbol of prosperity. But to most people in the West, it refers to the evil connected with the Nazi regime during the Second World War. But its origin seems to go back even further, and its meaning represents an ancient power that can manifest in its center.
The origin of the swastika is dated to 12,000 years ago in the Ukraine. We have found an ivory figurine with the swastika etched on it. It then gets transferred into the Nordic realm. It's used throughout ancient Europe. And then it moves into Asia, where it becomes a symbol adopted by the Hindus and the Buddhists. Almost everywhere the swastika appears, it's a symbol of life, of luck, and prosperity.
Without the spiral, nothing can grow. A plant can't grow without the spiral motion. Blood can't flow through the veins of the human body without moving in a spiral pattern. Blood doesn't move that way, it moves that way. So without that spiral motion and without those four elements in balance, you have nothing.
The ancients were very aware of the swastika, and to them it represented a kind of portal area, a vortex, what they call a four-armed vortex, and that would represent what they would call a very strong energy center. So in terms of geomancy, it does represent that it would be a vortex, the swastika, and it's a very powerful type of vortex.
The Ankh and the cross similarly are associated with Egypt. The Ankh is one of the most recognizable symbols from ancient Egypt, known as the Key of Life or the Cross of Life. Its association with the afterlife made it a popular, potent symbol for the Coptic Christians of Egypt. But experts suggest these are both the representations of power beyond this realm.
Really, if you go into deep, deep antiquity, you discover that the Ankh predates Egypt, predates the land of Chem. It's antediluvial. So when you look at the information from the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and you discover that Enki and Enlil had access to something called a Duran key, which was also something called a bond heaven-earth, where they would walk from Earth into their home planet and back again. Only the elite of the elite had access to this. And in order to activate these stargates, you had to have a Jed pillar Ankh in your hand. So the Ankh itself would have this jet inside of it, and this jet looks similar to a Tesla coil, ironically. And then you had the Ankh itself. Now, this Ankh was technology along with this jet, and it was oscillator, and it would oscillate at the frequency of the atomic structure of the owner of the Ankh. And if you didn't match the right frequency, you couldn't walk through the Stargate.
Not far from the source of the Ankh derived another symbol.
As far back as I can work out, the cross really happens in Egypt. So the cross literally represents the materialization of the invisible into the physical plane. This eventually gets added to the mysteries teachings, and it becomes part of the initiation concepts. So going back to, as far as I can work out, 6000 BC, they come back risen from the dead, and at that moment they're applied the symbol of the man or the woman who is nailed to a wooden post or a beam or a cross, which means that by the time we get to the Roman era, this is a very profound symbol.
There is one more symbol that looks like a cross, but it is called the Chicana. On the other side of the world, mostly in South America, a cross made out of cubes graces the presence of even the Nazca area. But this symbol also suggests a passage through to another world.
The Chicana is the equal-armed cross of the Peruvian Andes. Many different cultures use this. And in the center of it, it has a hole. And this hole was said by the Incas and various other cultures to allow the divine influence to come through the center of the cross into the physical world and into human beings.
The Chicana cross is one of the most important symbols to the Incas. It's a simple three-step cross that actually encodes their view on life. One of the steps represents the stellar realm, the celestial realm, and the celestial bodies. The second step represents Earth life and all that we experience on Earth. And the third step represents the afterlife and the underworld.
If we have reused these images over and over again, what is the significance? Is there an even deeper meaning to their origin than stated? Matthias Di Stefano suggests that all these symbols were actually part of an ancient technology ingrained in our minds, left over from the Atlantean time period. A machine designed to change realities.
The main technology of Atlantis was what we call the Proticta. Proticta was something that was brought from another planet, from another world, but it's something that you can really build here and to work with that, with minerals that we have in this world. Because the Proticta is just a projection, a fractal of the construction of all realities.
If there really was a technology designed from ancient times, how then do all these symbols that seem to be placed in our consciousness work together to create this device?
So you had to understand the spirituality within in order to figure out how the technology worked. And this created the symbols that made every culture after it to be together. These 33 cubes in many dimensions was the main technology to create the free energy to create new realities. So whoever accomplished to reach the 33 cubes, the 33 steps of the body, of the mind, of the soul, would be enlightened and would be like God, able to create realities. When you get that cube and you cut it in the middle, you will have the second dimension. The second dimension will show you that these 27 cubes with these other 6 around are only 4 around with the shape of a square. This creates the Chicana. The Chicana is the symbol from the South American cultures with the hole within, which is the main core of the vacuum. So everyone could know about the stairs to the creation. There is no up, there is no below, there is no east and west. All the path is together the same. Everything is a cycle, and the only thing existing is the void in the center. This pattern inside, taking this Merkaba that creates the cube, when we cut it in the middle, we have the Star of David. The Star of David would be the symbol to help us recognize that we are trinities in matter. So some cultures took the Star of David like a symbol to understand that we are vibration, energy, matter, will, love, and wisdom. By taking the spinning of this Merkaba, we will have the main line that aligns the self. This alignment of the self would be the central code that creates the spinning of every one of the chakras. And when all these chakras are aligned from the heart, the center of the system, there's another light that goes to the expansion of the universe, not only vertical, but also horizontal. And then not only the relation would be from the creator to the creation, but also helping to understand that from the heart we can become our own creators of our own reality. Then we have this star that is shining in the center by the Star of David. And when we see that shape, we will find the shape of the torus around, creating like a half of the moon. And this is the Islam symbol. And that every region in its core have Muslim, Hebrew, Christianity, and all the other religions, like in South America, like in Egypt, they all have the symbols coming from the Proticta. So from this cross that the Christians have, from the main core of the system, the energy goes and flows towards the outside and going back to the main core to recreate constantly the same energy. And that's create the key of life. The symbol of the key of life is the one that connects the whole pattern of energy. And also, by connecting the spheres, touching every one of the nodes, we have the flower of life, which is the symbol that connects biology, that connects every geometry and every code of life. So the Proticta, coming from the void, projecting its reality as a machine, it's the symbol that puts together everything. It's the symbol that puts together every belief, every reality, every science, every religion, every spirituality, the soul, the emotion. Everything has its place in that machine that we call life.
If this is true, why are they all scattered across the world with different meanings, with a never-ending belief system that they will never be as one?
In the third dimension, the concepts are all divided. They are all spread. That's why we call it sciences, we call it religions, we call it philosophies, spirituality. We call it all separated because in the third dimension we see everything separated. So you can go at any one of those paths and you will find coherence. That's the step of the enlightenment. That's the step when you understand, when you connect with all the ideas, and we think that technology is the only answer. And for the ancients, this technology was spiritual. In order to get to the awareness of how to use this, you needed to be someone spiritual. And by spiritual, it doesn't mean to believe. It doesn't mean to have a religion. It doesn't mean to have someone that is a plan in the universe. By spiritual means to be coherent, to be someone that really is in balance with what he or she does, feel, and think. So this is why those machines shouldn't be turned on in these times, because we would use it to destroy and not to find the balance.
Is it possible that one day we could look at the symbols of the world without the meaning we have attached to them? Matthias suggests that if we could, our world would be much different.
It would be like a faster way to connect everything, to evolve as a society very fast, because our technology would be like thousands of years ahead in evolution, because we could understand how to create everything, how to download everything, like Tesla did, like he understood about all these codes, precisely because the third dimension is just one perception of this aspect of the Protikta.
If these codes are left dormant until we can figure out how to spiritually connect with this device, could there be more clues of how to navigate this spiritual journey? Greg Braden points out that mysterious new symbols have been uncovered in South America.
We know of 23 ancient scripts that have yet to be understood, and we can only begin to imagine what it is, the secrets that they hold, and what they are telling us about our relationship to ourselves, to the earth, and beyond the earth, if they were left to us by beings who are so sophisticated that they were able to communicate with ideograms streamlined, compactly, very efficiently, without the use of cumbersome alphabets and entire sentences and paragraphs to explain what it is that they were sharing.
Whatever these ancient scripts might be, they speak to something that we have not been able to crack yet, or perhaps understand.
A lot of people today are interested in extraterrestrial disclosure, but one of the great questions is, how will we communicate with extraterrestrial beings? Will they speak English? Probably not. So we're going to have to find some other method of communicating, and that's going to be through symbols. We're going to have perhaps a common symbol set that we'll be able to ultimately use as a primer at first, that will be able to be elaborated into a more complex way to communicate.
It seems that the 32 ancient symbols of human existence left behind a roadmap of a sophisticated language on how to decipher the universe. A language we have separated out into different meanings, and thus deactivating a very powerful technology. Is it possible that through our own spirituality, we might be able to activate the most ancient technology that will forward humanity? Only we can change the future from our understanding of the past, slowly deciphering the codes that bring us back to our true potential.